me walk you through a situation that happens to thousands of people every single year across this country. Because you are sitting on your couch watching TV on a quiet evening when you hear a knock at your front door, and you figure it is your neighbor or maybe a delivery driver. So you walk over and open the door without thinking twice. And standing right there on your porch are two plainclothes detectives who smile at you and seem polite enough. But then one of them says, "The 7 most dangerous words you will ever hear from law enforcement. We just want to talk." This is not a friendly conversation, and this is not the detectives being neighborly or making small talk, because that phrase is a specific interview technique that law enforcement officers are trained to use to get you to lower your guard. And if you do what most people do, which is to start talking and answering questions because you think you have nothing to hide, you might accidentally hand over information that could be twisted and used against you, even if you have done absolutely nothing wrong, which is why you need to pay very close attention to what I'm going to show you in this video. Before I give you the exact words that will help you handle this situation calmly and keep you from accidentally saying something you do not mean to say, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell so you do not miss an update. Here is what most people do not understand about that phrase, "We just want to talk." Because 2 detectives do not show up at your front door on a random evening because they are bored or because they have nothing better to do. They are there because they are gathering information for an investigation. And they are at your door specifically because they believe you might have information related to something that happened, whether that is a crime down the street or something they are looking into. And even if they tell you that you are only a witness, witnesses can quickly become persons of interest simply because of how you answer their questions. Let me give you a real-world example of how this plays out, because I have seen this happen in cases across the country more times than I can count. And the scariest part is that you do not have to be guilty of anything for the situation to become a nightmare. You are standing at your own front door, you are nervous, but you want to be helpful because you are a good citizen. So you answer a few questions, thinking you're just explaining that you do not know anything about what happened, but what you do not realize is that every single word you say is being noted down, and a nervous pause or a small inconsistency in your memory because you are anxious can later be presented as evidence that you are being deceptive. So what is the smart move, and what are the exact words you need to memorize before you ever open your door to law enforcement? You do not invite them inside. You do not start guessing or answering questions. You do not slam the door in their face because that can be noted as uncooperative behavior. And you do not stay completely silent without saying anything because that can also be interpreted in ways that do not help you. Instead, you stand calmly at your door, you do not step outside, and you say these exact words. "I do not answer questions without my attorney present. Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" That simple response, "I do not answer questions without my attorney present. Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" works for 3 reasons that I need you to understand, because knowing why something works makes it much easier to remember when you are nervous. First, by saying "I do not answer questions," you are clearly and politely invoking your 5th Amendment right to remain silent, and courts have repeatedly ruled that you must actually say these words clearly because staying quiet alone can sometimes be interpreted differently. Second, by adding "without my attorney present," you are also invoking your 6th Amendment right to have a lawyer present during any questioning. And once you have asked for an attorney, law enforcement is required by law to stop asking you questions immediately. And third, by asking, "Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" you are putting the responsibility back on the detectives to make a clear choice, because either you are free to leave, in which case you can politely close your door and go back to watching your movie, or you are being detained, in which case they have to articulate a specific legal reason for that detention, and they cannot simply say, "We just want to talk," as a justification for keeping you there. This question forces them to decide on the spot, and most of the time, if they do not have a warrant or probable cause, they will tell you that you are free to go. Now, let me address what the law says about this situation, because the Supreme Court has weighed in on police encounters at private residences many times, and understanding these rulings can help you feel more confident when you're standing at your own front door. In the case of Florida versus Jardines, decided in 2013, the Supreme Court ruled that the area immediately surrounding your home, including your front porch and your driveway, is considered part of your home for 4th Amendment purposes, which means law enforcement cannot simply come onto your property without a warrant or without a valid exception. But here's the important part that many people do not know. There's a legal tactic known as a knock and talk, where law enforcement officers can approach your front door and knock just like any other visitor could, but you have absolutely no legal obligation to open that door, and you have no obligation to answer any of their questions, even if you do open the door. Your front door is a boundary, and you're the one who decides whether to open it or not, and you can simply choose not to answer the door at all, or you can open it, say the phrase I just gave you, and then close it. Most detectives will be polite and professional when you assert your rights. They may nod and say they understand and then leave because they know that once you have clearly stated that you will not answer questions without a lawyer, they cannot legally continue questioning you. But what if the detective pushes back and says something like, "If you have nothing to hide, why won't you just talk to us?" Or, "This will go easier for you if you cooperate." Because some officers use that kind of response to see if they can get you to change your mind and start talking. If the detective says, "If you have nothing to hide, why won't you talk to us?" Here is your calm and polite response. Say this exactly. "I am exercising my constitutional rights. That is not evidence of anything." And here is why those words are so effective. Because the Supreme Court has ruled in multiple cases, including Griffin versus California, that a person's choice to remain silent or to invoke their right to counsel cannot be used as evidence of guilt against them. So when you say that phrase, you are reminding the detective that your silence is protected and that they cannot legally hold it against you. Now let me also address another common concern, because people often worry that if they do not talk to the police, they might look suspicious or guilty. And this fear is exactly what law enforcement is trained to use to get people to talk. Here's the truth that you need to remember. Guilty people talk themselves into trouble all the time, but innocent people also talk themselves into trouble all the time because they think that explaining their side will make everything better. The Innocence Project has documented that nearly 30% of all wrongful convictions involved false confessions or incriminating statements that innocent people made to police because they thought they were just helping. Most of those statements did not start in an interrogation room with bright lights and handcuffs. They started with a simple conversation on a front porch or in a driveway where a detective said, "Hey, we just want to talk." The person thought they could clear things up quickly, but their words were taken out of context. A nervous pause was noted as suspicious behavior, and before they knew it, they were in a situation they never expected. That is why the safest choice is always to politely decline to answer questions and to ask for a lawyer. Let me also be very clear about something else that confuses many people. The famous Miranda warning that you hear on television only applies when you are in custody, meaning when you have been arrested or when you are not free to leave. That friendly conversation on your front porch, you're not in custody, which means the detectives do not have to read you your rights, and every single word you say on that porch can be used against you in court. Your front porch is not a courtroom, but your words can certainly end up in one, which is exactly why the safe approach is to say very little and to ask for a lawyer. Now, what about the possibility that the detectives have a warrant? Because if they have a valid search warrant for your home, they do not need your permission to come inside, and they can enter whether you invite them or not. But here's what you need to know. Even if they have a warrant to search your home, you still do not have to answer their questions. You still have the right to remain silent, and you still have the right to ask for a lawyer. And if they say they have a warrant, you have the right to ask to see it. And you can step aside and let them do what the warrant allows while you remain silent. Let me give you a full example of how this entire conversation sounds from start to finish so you can hear how natural and calm it can be. Detective knocks on your door. You open it. Detective says, "Good evening. We are investigating an incident that happened nearby. We just want to ask you a few questions." You say, "I do not answer questions without my attorney present. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" Detective says, "We are not detaining you. We just thought you might have seen something." You say, "Then I am going to close my door now. Have a good evening." That is the whole interaction. Short, calm, and respectful. And you have not answered any questions. You have not admitted to anything. And you have not been confrontational. Now let me summarize the exact phrases you need to memorize for this situation, because having them in your memory before you ever hear that knock on your door is the most important thing you can do. When the detective says, "We just want to talk," say, "I do not answer questions without my attorney present. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" If they push back and say you should just cooperate, say, "I'm exercising my constitutional rights. That is not evidence of anything." And if they say they have a warrant, step aside, do not interfere, but say nothing more than, "I'm going to remain silent." Practice these phrases at home, say them out loud by yourself, because when you're standing at your front door with two detectives looking at you, you do not want to be thinking about what to say. You want your mouth to know what to say automatically. And remember, none of this is legal advice for your specific situation, because laws can vary from state to state, and what works in one jurisdiction might be different in another. So if you are ever charged with something or you have questions about your specific situation, you should consult with a local lawyer who knows the judges and the prosecutors in your area. If this video helped you understand exactly how to handle that question, "We just want to talk," and gave you the exact words to protect your rights while staying calm and respectful, hit that like button right now because it helps more people find these videos when they need them. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an update when I post new breakdowns of police interactions and your rights. And drop a comment below telling me if you have ever had law enforcement knock on your door and what you said, because I read every comment, and I will see you in the next video.